Hi, my name is Phil Colcord. I'm president of Fraternal Order of Police Evergreen Lodge 1 here in Kitsap County. And it's my pleasure today to have Sheriff John Gese here. He's been on here before. We're going to give you an update on how things are going at the Sheriff's Office, the problems and the solutions they faced. So sit back and we hopefully will entertain you and also give you some good information. John, welcome aboard. Thank you for being here. I know you're busy. It's good that you took time out to help us with this. Um, what's new since you were on the show before that you'd like to address?
Okay, good question. And first off, thank you for having me back on the show. I do appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you about some of the successes and some of the challenges we're seeing here at the Sheriff's Office, but also to communicate more with our public out in our community.
Mm-hmm.
But so what's new since I was here, which I think was summer of 2023. One thing I will say about the last 4 or 5 years, there's dramatically new stuff every year, and this last year really was no different. When I think of the highlights in the last year for us, I know last time I was on the show, I talked about staffing and in our profession and our agency. We've seen historic staffing and turnover, and happy to say in this last year, we've pretty much filled all of our positions. Our retirements are slowing down. So yeah, that's a great opportunity for us. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been 3 or 4 years since we experienced anything like that.
That's a success story right there
Yeah,
itself.
yeah, it gets us to the fully staffed budgeted positions, which is great. But even though we're there, we still have so many new people in the last year or so. We still have a lot of people going through that training cycle on the academy and stuff and getting up to speed. But it is good news, and we are seeing good applicants, for our sheriff's office, high quality applicants. A lot of good lateral applicants too, people who are at other agencies and may choose to leave, and they see us as a destination agency. So that's a major accomplishment and something
Yeah,
we all are
that's
pretty
really
proud
good.
of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say a few other things new in the last year. We just now have implemented body-worn cameras and in-car cameras. That's been a game changer. That was a major investment we've made, and the county commissioners supported in the last year. But that's really upped the game as far as our ability to document evidence, and it fits our bill for trying to be transparent and accountable too. So it's been a change in how things work, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. But yeah, we've implemented that program now too.
That's good. That is, to me, kind of a two-way sword with the body cameras. And if the departments have them, and for court, that's fine. The part that doesn't sit well with me is like the news media. They should play the whole part, not just little parts that maybe not tell the whole story. So, and I seen that happen, and that part upsets me about them. I would hope that they have more control over allowing the truth to get out, what's written, rather than just a small part.
And that's what I really like about the body worn and the car cameras, is it lets us control that message, because that's true. If you have an incident, you might see on the news only a very short, like 5 or 10-second snippet of something that may have lasted an hour. Or if somebody else takes that and puts that on social media. And that's one of the things we found right away, that, when you see the whole totality of the circumstances and how things lead up to other things, and the progression of events, sometimes it's important to have that whole piece of video.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
And so, we look to work with news media to communicate, but we also communicate ourselves too through social media and stuff like that. So it does help us control the message a little bit more, to at least what we think gives us a fair rendition of kind of what happened out there.
Yeah, law enforcement, I think you don't mind them judging you on what happened, as long as they have the whole story.
Right.
So, we learn by our mistakes, and we try not to make them, and that's the way law enforcement has been.
Yeah, and people, one thing about having this program is we have gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of film of our deputies out there doing the work that they do and driving around our community, people don't see the 99.9% of all the great interactions that we have, all the routine things we do. It's that one little thing that unfortunately, yes, we are on camera and we know that, but that's not, representative of the agency as a
Well,
whole
yeah, and
sometimes.
with cameras, you, and I'm sure your officers will be that way too. They're going to show their true colors. They're going to because they they don't focus on the camera. They focus on doing their jobs,
Right.
and so it's not a deterrent for them to do
Mhm.
their job, and it should help them to make
Mhm.
sure that it collaborates, like you said, for what they're telling
Yeah,
you
and
happened.
and I'm proud to have the program, but I'm very
Mm,
proud that the deputies also wanted this program,
mm,
and so it was great that we could implement it.
that's
And like
great.
I said, it was a $5 million project over 5 years, so it's
Mm,
a pretty significant investment of
yeah,
funds.
yeah, it is. So, what are you seeing in the crime trends?
Really a mixed bag. And with crime trends, people talk and they hear about crime rates. And, when I do presentations, sometimes I'll just ask the crowd, what do you think is going on out there? And I'll hear everything from it's the worst it's ever been to, oh, we have historically low crime rates. And in reality, a lot of that is all true, right? You hear stories about the crime rate was the highest in the 1990s. You and I worked in the 1990s, and that was probably true. There was a lot of crime. Uh, it's historically been dropping over the years, but the last 3 or 4 years have been really odd. The pandemic struck, crime really did take a holiday for us. I mean, it was dramatically lower. As we've come out of the pandemic, we saw it rising pretty dramatically the first year or so. Now some things are leveling off, but some things are still hard. So a couple, if I could take just a minute.
Mhm,
But one of the ones that we've been watching the last couple years is stolen vehicles. Um, we saw a dramatic growth in vehicles in the last few years, and to be fair, across the country they've seen auto theft rise too. But Washington State had hit like number 3 in the nation for the number of stolen cars in the nation, and so it was good to see that start to trail down this
mm,
last year, and it looks like this year is starting to be a good trend. And there's a number of different reasons for that. We speculate on some of this, but the pursuit laws we think had an impact on the number of stolen cars because as soon as they changed the pursuit law to very restrictive and pretty much put the message out there you couldn't chase a lot of people, we did see our stolen cars take a
mm,
dramatic jump. So good news is they're starting to come down. They're still historically high over the last 10 years right now, but the trend is down, so
mm,
that's good. Murder homicide for us last year had gone up pretty significantly, like 40-50%. Now we don't have a lot of homicides, but this year it's looking better so far, knock wood. Um, Crime like retail theft, I think that's an underreported crime. I mean, those numbers still are high.
mm.
Uh, Burglaries look to be down, so really a mixed bag. But what we have seen the last couple of years that's concerning is a little bit more violent crime, and these are particularly not crimes where it's a victim is a stranger to the suspect, but these are probably crimes where people know each other, and especially young people using firearms or other weapons against each other. So we've seen an uptick in those numbers.
Yeah, this is my own opinion. I think that part of the rise in crime is due to lack of accountability.
Mm,
And I mean, the cops are taxed to the
mhm,
limit with what you have to do. Your
mhm,
resources, all the out resources are taxed to the limit.
mhm,
And so um, a lot of people aren't held accountable for what they do. I had prosecutor here too, and
mm,
he talked about that too, that, they're so understaffed that, they handle crimes against person
mhm,
priority. The other ones, they do as they can, but
mhm,
it's mainly crimes against person, which that's understandable. Well, that's what I would do too. The first one's the most important. But
mhm,
at the same time, people, especially juveniles, figure I'm going to get away with it, And so that makes the accountability lacking, so that the crimes go up.
I agree. I mean, the whole system has to work well, right?
Right.
And that includes the police, the prosecutors, the courts. And, partly coming out of the pandemic, I mean, the courts were
Mhm.
closed down for almost a year, a tremendous backlog, staffing issues with police, staffing issues with prosecutors' office. Now, the new concern, one of the new challenges we have is the state Supreme Court's considering rules for the number of cases public defenders can hold.
I saw that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, if those go through, that means we would have to come up with dozens more public defenders,
Or
but
dismiss a lot of cases.
yeah, dismiss the cases, and
Mhm.
that's not an answer. I mean, that's not holding people accountable.
No.
So, keeping people, on the string for a year or two while all this gets through, that's not right either. So,
Mhm. No, no, it's, we're a long way from fixing
mhm.
the problem. Uh, what challenges keep you awake at night?
Well, I think what keeps me awake at night right now is I am concerned about the level of violence, and I'm speaking about firearms and guns that we're seeing out here with the young, late teens, early 20s. That is the concern. I'm concerned about the number of fatal crashes we have, the number of very reckless driving, serious crashes we have. That seems to be on the rise. I think, the one of the things that I ponder a lot here recently is, in Kitsap County, we've seen our county really start to grow. We've seen a lot of development, a lot of new
Mhm.
housing, more cars on the road. You had mentioned it earlier, and it's something people hear from me all the time, and the sheriffs before me, is we're not a really well-resourced agency to begin
No.
with. And, Washington State ranks 50 out of 50 states for the number of officers ratio per
Mhm.
population. Kitsap County Sheriff's Office is way down in the bottom of the 200 some law enforcement agencies in Washington. So even when we're fully staffed, we don't really feel we have the resources to keep up with the demand and the expectations.
Yeah.
So how do we keep up with the growth? That is
Yeah.
the number one issue I have right
Yeah,
now.
and it's an impossible task,
Mhm.
or close to impossible.
Mhm.
I had a similar conversation with one of the fire chiefs, and
Mhm.
saying, this is kind of one of my pet peeves, and I don't mean for it to bother me, but it bothers me. When we started at the sheriff's office, when I started, we only had 3 people work in the county in
Mhm.
uh, on a fat night. A lot of times there was 2 of us. Sometimes we
Mhm.
were the only one. And we did our own dispatching too,
Mhm.
so we had to put one on dispatch. And the fire department
Mhm.
had paid chief, all the rest were volunteers. And they had firehouses in barns, in
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
places. And they we got trained to be EMTs, so we'd have someone that knew a little bit about first aid that's on the
Mhm.
scene, because ones run the ambulance had just a basic first aid card.
Mhm.
Well, we jump ahead for all these years, right? And you look at how few officers we have. We're still
Mhm.
in the same building that we were
Mhm.
in back then. And you look at how many paid firemen there are. And I'm not saying that that's
Mhm.
not good. That's a good thing. But we're we didn't even come close to staying up
Mhm.
with them. We're way down here, almost where we were, and the fire departments are all up here.
Mhm.
Now, I understand fires and emergencies, they're they get a priority, but I think law enforcement should have
Mhm.
more priority too, and they should support us more than they do as far as
Mhm.
money-wise, so that you can have the people you need and so forth.
I agree. I agree. And right now, there's a governor race going on for who's going to be the next governor. Both of the top candidates going into the general election both call for more police officers in our state. Yeah, the question is, how do we get there? Because I think people recognize the need, and we're at a level of staffing for our deputies is that we were at 2008.
Mhm.
Our county is a lot different than it was
That
in
was in 2008.
2008. Yeah.
And
So,
all these houses, housing projects, I call them projects, I don't know, apartment
hmm
complexes they're building,
hmm
that's gonna bring an influx of people, because we're basically
hmm
have been for years a bedroom community in Seattle,
hmm
and people can't afford to live in Seattle. We're gonna have a lot of their problems coming over here
right.
as they start to occupy all those.
Sure. And just the congestion alone, the cars on the road, the number of accidents you'll have, the number of DUIs you'll have, just all that adds to the kind of the stress, and the pressure on the agency to provide the resources where it can. But like you say, sometimes we have to prioritize. One of our biggest requests for service right now is just traffic enforcement, speed enforcement on our county roadways, and just trying to keep up with that pace has been hard. We're not meeting the expectations of the folks that we serve out there in the county right now, and it's only going to get worse.
Yep. I wish we had the answers. Okay. What are some of the positive and success that you like to share with the folks?
Well, I think one that comes to mind most readily is the fact that we have hired so many new people over the last few years, and it's been really tough to watch all of our friends that we grew up with the agency that have worked with us for 20, 25 years leave, and they've walked away with this huge amount of knowledge and tenure and commitment to the community. And that's been kind of tough to watch. But what's been really exciting is the people coming into the agency. They just have a wonderful heart for service. They understand coming into this job that there's a lot of pressure and a lot of requirements and a lot of spotlight on police officers and police work these days. And they're coming into it with a great attitude. They want to serve the public. They're willing to rise to the challenge and the expectations. And that's just so encouraging to me, and it's just such a positive in our department too. Um, so I think that's one of the most positive things I've seen. The other thing I think I've seen is we're starting to see, George Floyd 2020 was a cataclysmic event that happened and had this huge impact on law enforcement, criminal justice. And we're starting, so much was enacted, so much new legislation was enacted, and we tried to adapt to all of it, and we're trying to do the best we can. But I see that starting to slow down now. I see, people recognizing it's like, yes, we want to hold police accountable. They should work for us. They should be transparent. But we also want to support them, and we need them to do what we expect them to do. So that's all been, I think, very positive the last year or so.
Well, that's good. My pet peeve on that is I think the news media did a total injustice with their short little blurb they showed on the news. And they showed it over and over again. And that alone made a lot of people angry and feel that those officers are guilty. I mean, before they went, you're innocent until proven guilty. That was not the case with them, and I don't think that should have been allowed to show that, not without showing everything that happened. I've had newspaper people tell me, well, our job is sensationalism. We're to give the public sensationalism. That kind of changed from when I was a kid. It was to report the truth, and I think that the Floyd deal crucified law enforcement in general, and we're coming back, which we should deserve to. And I'm not saying that the officers involved in the Floyd deal, I don't know. I know how the court case went. I don't know anything else except for what I saw on the news. So I'm not going there as far as, guilty or innocent or what should have happened and shouldn't. Just I think it was wrong to, do the news the way they did. I met quite a few of your officers over the years doing this and also in public and so forth. And I think you're doing a wonderful job getting high caliber people. They're down to earth. They're good communicators, and they're friendly and professional. And I want to thank you for that. That's what we need out there.
I appreciate that. And one of the other things I really like is so many of the folks we've hired are people who are from Kitsap County. They grew up here. They went to the high schools here. They've worked here in the county. Their families and friends live here. They're very invested in the community, and yeah, but I appreciate that. And, we're starting to see now generational situations. We have a young man graduating from the academy tomorrow that's the son of one of our longtime detectives. So.
Oh, who's that?
Tim Keeler is the detective who his son Cameron is graduating from the academy, and Tim retired just a few months ago. So
Good. good. Yeah, well, and including our prosecuting attorney,
Mhm.
he was a graduated here in
Homegrown boy, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and, that's the nice part about that is they care about the community. They're not
Mhm.
just there for the job. They care about
Right.
what they're doing and the people that live here,
Yeah.
and that's good. Uh, what what can we see as a public to could do to help support law enforcement in the sheriff's office?
Yeah, I would say this. We talked a lot about changes in law enforcement the last couple of years. Expectations are very high. A lot of new rules that we're still adapting to. And I would say this, as police, we're willing to be held accountable. We understand we're supposed to meet the expectations of our communities. But with all the changes in the laws and everything else, and the expectations, we also got to remember we're people. Our deputies are people. They're out there trying to do the best they can. I think you have to set, for police, you should set rules, and
Mhm,
we should live by them. But those rules have to be attainable and not unrealistic. We have to be able to succeed at our job. We have to tell our people coming into our profession, yes, follow the rules, and you will be okay, and that you'll be, well received, and the public will support you. So just understand that I think Kitsap County is a very supportive area for
mhm,
law enforcement, and we've really appreciated that, and that means a lot. And I think a lot of that comes with hard work over years building up that respect and that trust. But yes, be careful. Police can't solve everything, and they can't always have positive outcomes every time. So sometimes things just might happen that are controversial, but remember, we are people out there trying to do the best job we can, and
mhm,
just please support that. Other thing you mentioned real quick, you talked about the media. And it's true. The media might show something, a bad outcome. Officers may be doing something wrong. And if you see that in the media kind of over and over again, it's like crime. You assume that it's so bad because you see it all the time. But what you don't see is the millions of interactions police have with people across this country every day that goes well or at
mhm,
least goes fine. It provides that kind of false outlook. So what happens in Minnesota, please don't use that to judge what happens here in Kitsap County. We're a separate agency. We're different people. We're a different environment. We're a different community. So, just remember that. And like you said, that's why it's so important for us to tell our own story, with our
mhm,
social media and our website and the things we do, the outreach we do. So, yes. And I guess finally, we've talked about funding and staffing, and I've been vocal that we need to consider some other potential funding source for local law enforcement, probably the prosecutor's office as well. There's some different avenues for that, and we have to have that discussion. And I know that the commissioners over the last few years have talked about it too, and my understanding is that they're willing to look at something like that. So if that should come up, I would ask that our community please consider and please support that. And
mhm,
there's some information we have to provide, and we have to provide the justification, but I think we can do that. And
mhm,
so that would be my other thought is, if you have high expectations of your police department and you have expectations for the service they provide, please help us get there.
mhm. No, that's reasonable and justified.
Hmm.
Um, anything else you'd like to add before we shut her down here? We're running out of time.
No, again, I appreciate the time you're giving me today and the support you have for local law enforcement, and your attempt to educate, on folks on law enforcement has been really marvelous. So thank you. And
Mm,
I would
mm,
say this to everybody in Kitsap County. Sheriff's office. First, I feel gratitude to be the elected sheriff, and I appreciate that. And all of our folks really do appreciate the support we get from our community here. We have a wonderful community here in Kitsap County, and it's our interest, just along as with everybody else, to keep it a great place to live and work.
Well, I think we're on the right track, and it's if it was up to you or I, it'd happen overnight, but
Hmm.
things don't happen that way.
Hmm.
So
Right.
we can just have to keep plugging along, and
Right.
eventually, I think we'll get there. And I everything I hear, we have a lot of support in Kitsap County,
Hmm.
so and that's a good thing.
We do.
So, um, the that's about all I really have. The guy that goes out and in the trenches to the homeless camps and so forth, you got a deputy that does that?
Deputy David Woolner is the one who he coordinates our efforts with that. Yes.
Why don't you see if you'd like to be on my show?
Oh, I will.
I think that'd be a good person to have.
Yeah, I think you'd find him and the community would find him very interesting in the work he does.
Okay.
Very insightful. Yeah.
Okay, good. That'd be great. That about concludes our show. I thank you again for being here, and I wish you much success, and you're in our thoughts and prayers.
Oh, thank you very much.
That concludes our show for today. I thank you folks for coming and watching. And if you want to see the show again, they'll be on the Bremerton-Kitsap Asset TV cable channels, and it'll also be available on our link at fopevergreenlodge.org. Go there and go to our link page, and you'll see a list of all the shows. Anyway, I thank you for coming, and you guys stay safe out there. And remember, we all want to be part of the solution. Have a good day. Thank you.